Hi, welcome back to Lovin Sheila, the podcast. As always, it's great to be with you here today. It's the fall, it's a new season, and it's a new season in more than one way. But I want to go back to something that we never talked about, and all these things that we talked about with narcissism and protecting yourself from toxic people, all these different things we talked about. However, we never talked about something that triggered me this last week, and that is a trauma bond. I was sharing some things with my therapist, and she said, you don't want to develop a trauma bond. And so, in the context of our conversation, I believe now I'm therapizing my therapist, but in the context of our conversation, I believe that she was incorrect in how she used that. I did look it up, and I found that oftentimes in colloquialisms, we use a trauma bond as just a shared experience. We went to war together, we did boot camp together, we survived high school together, whatever it is, and we look at that as a trauma bond. When in actuality, a trauma bond is, I'm gonna say it like this: a relationship that does have some unhealthy characteristics, abuse, physical, emotional, financial, some type of abuse. That following the abuse, there is a honeymoon period of, I love you, I'm sorry, I only did that because you did this, or blah, blah, blah. And then you come back together and remain bonded. And that's your trauma bond. And it actually continues. It's a cycle and it continues. And unfortunately, I actually have experienced that. And you feel responsible for that other person's emotions. You feel you just feel very bonded to them, and you have difficulty discontinuing the relationship because of that responsibility you feel for them. And so that is the trauma bond. So you've bonded over your trauma, you bonded over your unhealthy behaviors. And that is something that is very difficult to overcome. And I know it firsthand. I know it, I experience it, because it's difficult to just cut it off and set boundaries. But for me, it's something that I work through, and I know who I am. I know how I respond. I know my gravitational pulls. And so for me, it's important just to stay away, because I know it's how easy it is to be sucked back in. And so that is that trauma bond. And so it is exactly what it says it is. It's a bond. It's like a chemistry thing. It attaches you based on that. It's not just based on, oh, I love this person, I care about them, they're taking care of me. It's that trauma, it's that vicious cycle that continually repeats itself. And so it's something that we have to work diligently to overcome. And so I want to make sure that when we talk about trauma bonds, that we're using it appropriately. And that's what it is. It's not just that we made it out of the hood together, or, we survived the things that were happening. It's more than that. So I wanted to leave you all with that understanding, because this episode, I wanted to talk about the soft girl era. And the soft girl era is something I was talking about last year, and something I don't feel that I was ever able to be, probably because of my trauma bond, and also because of my survival mode. In your survival mode, it's difficult to be soft girl, to be in your soft girl era. And, and also the way you're raised. I mean, I was raised to figure it out, to work through things, to land on my feet. And so in my soft girl era, consider, what I want to be my soft girl era, is where I am, allowing things to like happen and let other people take care of that. I'm just this soft girl over here, and I'm just going to sit back and kind of watch things happen. But as I've entered my soft girl era, unfortunately, what I've learned is it's difficult for me to do that, because I am who I am. And I still want to be loved, and I still want to be nurtured, and I still want to be cared for and thought of and checked on and those kind of things. And I guess that's what my soft girl era is. It's just check on me, love on me, be there for me, spend time with me, because in truth and in fact, I've got this. I'm taking care of a lot of different things, and they're under control by the grace of God. So, I'm not what one could call a damsel in distress, and I think that's where the conundrum is for the soft girl era. When you're not a damsel in distress, when you don't need to be saved, but at the same time you still want that love and affection and that care. And that's the whole conundrum of a person like me entering into their soft girl era, because no one has to save me. There's no catastrophes going on. I've fortified myself with my boundaries. I'm protected. So how does one show up in my soft girl era? Um, and I I pause there because it's difficult for me to understand, because I have created the life that I wanted, and in relationship I've been the co-creator of the life that I've wanted. And I'm one who will date myself. I will take myself out to a concert or take a trip, or fly myself wherever I want to go. So how does one participate in being there or show up for me in my soft girl era? Well, that's what I'm learning too. I'm not completely sure, but as I spend some time with myself, I think I've been spending a considerable amount of time alone. And I always said I like being alone. I considered myself the lone wolf. But what I realized over the last years that no, it's not that I like being alone. It's just I'm selective about my company. And so that's why I find myself spending time with myself quite a bit. So anyway, um, but what I found is there's a way to embrace being alone from being lonely. Being alone is setting the foundations for your togetherness, because if you can't be alone, if you can't be happy with yourself, if you don't know how to love your own yourself, then how can someone show up and love you? So I think being alone is part of the building blocks for having a life with someone, because it allows you to see what you enjoy, what you appreciate, where your mind wanders to, because that's a telltale sign of your desires. Where does your mind wander when you're alone? Like, my mind wanders to, where am I going to go next? What adventure am I going to take? And so that's what I'm learning in my time alone. But that's not what I wanted to share. What I want to share is pretty much the reframing of the time alone, from loneliness to more solitude. And in our solitude is where we find peace. And I think we all strive for peace, especially for those recovering from trauma bonds or unhealthy relationships or unhealthy attachments, or those who have anxious attachment styles. It's important for us to find our peace. And sometimes that is found in solitude, and learning to love yourself and do the things that you enjoy and appreciate, and escaping to the places that your mind wants to go by yourself, so that when you are actually in fellowship, you are better in that fellowship. So I just wanted to reframe that and say that sometimes we're alone because we choose to be. We're alone because we appreciate our solitude and we don't want anything to encroach upon our space. Um, it's preparing me better for I think for my soft girl era, because I'm spending time trying to understand and how I can get the things that I want, or how, just really understanding me, because I understand there's not a lot of room to show up as a savior. I have Jesus, and he's helped me to take care of myself and provided for me, and provided the provision for the vision. So now spending this time alone helps me see where folks can show up for me in my soft girl era. And I realize that it is through just time and care and love and attention. And that also realize that our love languages, and I'm going to study this out. This is a fresh revelation, fresh out the gate. But our love languages can change during different seasons in our life. Like I mentioned, the seasons are changing. different seasons in our life, meaning there was a time when, with undoubtedly, indubitably, um, acts of service was my love language. And as I am progressing in my soft girl era and this revelation of who I am, it's not as significant as it once was. Now I'm finding like words of affirmation, which was my second most important love language. It has really risen to the top. Touch, which wasn't really important to me previously, has gained a little more ground. So I think as we go through different seasons and as we evolve, even our love languages can like evolve as well. And so that's just something to be aware of. We are not married to our senses, our love languages. They can change. We can change. And what we need to do is be present and sensitive to recognize those the changing of the seasons so that we can be intuitive and respond and react, and making sure that we are taking care of what we need in that season. And so this is just a bit of a tune-up, looking at the seasons and where we are, and making sure that we are mindful of ourselves and tuning in and taking the solitude we need to get the peace, to get clarity as we need it, because things can get very convoluted, things can get shaken up, but we need to, keep our feet on the ground and understand where we are and make sure we're moving forward with clarity, with wisdom, and that we are circumspect in all of our movements so that in the end we can get where we want to be. And that's what I'll leave you with. I'll see you on the next Lovin Sheila, the podcast.